Hi guys, I'm Nina, you're the intro bang hipster darlings, and today we're going to talk about something, and we're going to talk about consent. But this is not going to be a haha funny video. It's going to be probably a little bit enthusiastic, and I know you guys like those, but it's definitely not going to be a haha funny video because this is sort of a serious topic, and I think it needs to be discussed because there's been some shit going down in the YouTube space. Basically, there have been conversations over the past week about rape culture and about how the YouTube space has been decidedly uncool about that. So we're going to talk about consent. Now, consent is not the absence of a no. Consent is an active, imaginative, creative inclusion of a yes. And so this is really important to me because when we talk about consent, we often talk about sex, but it's not just about sex, it's about anything. And this is at least how I view it, and I think it needs to be brought into the mainstream about how we take conversations and relationships very seriously. Now, Rain has 3 guidelines to where you can start talking about the definition of consent and if you might have it. One is age, and there are plenty of places that have different ages of consent and have different ages of consent for gay and straight, and that's fine and cool, but you need to know that before you even get in a relationship or sexuality, you know, business or whatever. Now, the second is, are you mentally capable of consenting to a sexual act? There are plenty of mental illnesses in the world that don't allow people to mentally consent to a sexual act. They don't know what they're doing. And then the third one is, did both participants agree to take part? So this is the one that we normally talk about because if the other two are handled, if age and mental capacity are handled, then we can talk about the third one really in depth because there are a lot of nuances to did you agree to take part. Now, consent is not just for people who are having sex with a stranger. If you are in a relationship and you want to have sex, you are still required to get consent. If you don't, it's rape. Now, that is a little bit of a hard point to take home, and I don't want to make this super preachy, but that's one of those things that I feel very strongly about, is that it's not just about strangers meeting strangers. It's about people we know. So, consent is not the absence of a no, it is the creative inclusion of a yes. Consent also is in levels. Consent is a process. So if you consent to kissing, you don't necessarily consent to making out. And if you consent to making out, you don't necessarily consent to sex. And if you consent to sex, you don't necessarily consent to unwanted pregnancy. And this is a discussion that happens in the reproductive rights policy debates all the time. Now, if you are legally intoxicated, you cannot consent. What this means is that you are not, if your partner forces you to have sex while you are intoxicated, that is rape as well. And if you're too drunk to make the decision and to communicate with your partner, you're too drunk to consent. And I'm not blaming anybody who wants to go drink, that's fine, that's whatever. But these are the things that we should know. Consent is never implied and cannot be assumed. This is a really important point for me, because even if you don't have a verbal yes, you can understand yes and no from someone. If someone stops talking when they're pretty, verbal about things, that can be assumed that maybe this is not the most comfortable place and maybe we need to take a step back and to further communicate about this. And consent is really part of a healthy sexuality, because it allows you to understand that you are willing to try something. That even if you don't like it, even if you're hesitant about it, that you are willing to try it. If you are saying yes, you are at least willing to try. And both partners need to be consenting. Now, this is such a huge deal to me. And I've spoken very briefly about it sort of before, about why this is important to me, because being sexually assaulted in my own home was terrifying for me. It was not a good experience, and I did not consent to that at all, and this is a super important topic, because we don't teach it to young children, and we really need to, because I want us to live in a world where rape is socially stigmatized like cannibalism is. That is what I want. I want the idea of making someone else a victim like that to be so unbelievably wrong that we fight about it, that we take this and say, this is so wrong. Why are we allowing this? Now, this is a lot of information, and consent challenges myths about sexuality. It challenges the slut versus the stud stereotype, and it communicates with your partner what you want out of sex and what you think you can get out of sex. And it's knowing what you're up against, knowing your partners, knowing how to protect yourself against pregnancy and STIs and things that might happen. Acknowledging that you and your partner have sexual desires. Yes, it's okay for you to enjoy sex. I know that's a crazy thing to say in our prudish America, but you are okay for having sexual desires, and it's okay for you to enjoy sex. And respect. Consent is about respect. Consent is so about respect. Consent is going, I don't know what you want. Consent is going, I am not sure that you want it today. I am not sure what you believe today, so let's talk about it. And it's sexy, man. Consent is sexy because it challenges all of those stereotypes about all of the things, and it allows us to talk about sex in a way that is really positive and really helpful, and I think that is super fucking sexy. It's sexy. So yeah, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about consent. Let's talk about ways that we can integrate consent in a really fun, imaginative way in the comment section, because I want to talk about consent, because this is the main problem with a lot of the things that I have in sexual wrongdoings, is that there is often a place where we don't talk about consent, and it's not educated on. So let's talk about consent. I don't know how this video went, honestly. I just love you guys, and I really wanted to talk about this today, and I think it's important to talk about. So, hope you guys liked this video. I know it's probably long, but I love you anyway, and I'll see you next week, hopefully for movie club. I don't fucking know. I've just been on a weird, crazy train, so till I see you next, bye guys.